basically it comes down to being able to forgive yourself, right? Like, or just like let things go. And this is like something I talk a lot about when people are trying to lose weight. It's absolutely. Like, oh, I messed up, and then they'll like dwell on it for a whole week. Yeah. It's like, oh, I ate this one thing. Well, I'm already messed up. Might as well. Blah 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 blah. Right. And it's like you got to just be like, I messed up. I forgive myself. Let's move on.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. How often do you record podcasts like this?
It's been a while. I used to have my own for like a couple years, and so I used to do them often. And then like on my YouTube channel, I'll do like interviews that basically are podcasts, but I don't call it a podcast because I don't put it on like any podcast platform. But you know, I haven't done one where I was getting interviewed in a while.
Cool. Well, I guess the way I usually start these things, the point of this is not to talk about the why of doing art or how to, or like how to lose weight or how to become buff or anything. It's more about the why of it. Mm-hmm. You know, because I think that like, you know, something like focusing on becoming a great artist, becoming a great skateboarder, becoming like losing a lot of weight, getting in shape is a lot more about the, like, why are you doing it in the first place versus like how to do it is actually, I think, pretty straightforward. Yeah. You know, to just consistently.
I mean, you could watch, there's so many videos on that, right? Like, yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, your journey is really inspiring. You know, you have obviously, like, you've made this brand around losing weight and inspiring a lot of people. And, you know, you've been in places yourself to where, like, it might have seemed hopeless at one point. And you were able to, like, dig yourself up out of that and, you know, do something really inspiring and cool with it. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's the kind of stuff I want to talk about.
For sure.
But yeah, did you have any thoughts on that initially, or?
I mean, like, when it comes to like the why, at least like for like when I started losing weight, like for me, it literally was, I was afraid I was going to die. Right. I don't know how accurate that was. I don't know how like founded that fear was, but that was a fear I had, right? I was 20 years old, and like I have stories of like when I was 20 and I would have like fears of being alone because I was like, what if I have a heart attack and nobody's here, right? At 20, I was literally still a kid, right? But I had that fear, right? And so for me, a lot of it was like genuine fear and like having like whenever I'd have some sort of like weird pain or something, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm dying. I don't know, again, who knows, right? Maybe I'm a hypochondriac, but so it was like that fear, and then on top of that, right, like just dealing with being an overweight teen, it's tough, you know. I was like 400 pounds at my heaviest, right? So you know, I really had like these thoughts of like, am I gonna make it to 40? I didn't know, you know. And so like those were like my whys at the start. And then as time went on and I was able to lose the weight, and then when I started, my Instagram was the first thing I started, that was Obese to Beast, right? It was, okay, well, the reason why I started the Instagram was because I felt so bad I was posting so much weight loss stuff on my regular Instagram. And I was like, all right, let me make an Instagram that's just weight loss. I don't feel bad about posting on it. And so I started posting on there. And then, like, it started, like, you know, getting some followers. Nothing crazy, but it was like, you know, people were following me that didn't know who I was. That was cool, right, for the first time in my life. And they were asking me questions. And so, like, okay, let's talk about, you know, let me try and help in some way, right? Which is, like, I think I definitely fell into the, you know, the Dunning-Kruger, where it was like I had just started losing weight, and in my mind I was like, man, I know everything, so I'm gonna help everyone with everything, right? And so I was like trying to help, but it's funny looking back now because I really didn't know what I was doing. But I was just trying to help. Like there was no like, I'm gonna make money off of this, I'm going there. That didn't really exist yet on Instagram because I'm old, you know, it was a while ago. First few years of Instagram being around, right? Before there was even stories, before there was even video, before any of that stuff, right? So I started just trying to help people. And then when it came to, I started YouTube because, again, on Instagram, I would get all these questions, and there's no video on Instagram. So it was all just trying to answer in a post was annoying, right? And so I was like, okay, let me make, and I watched YouTube videos. Like I learned how to play drums on YouTube. Like YouTube it still is like how I learned stuff, right? And so I was like, okay, it makes sense to make a YouTube channel to try and help people lose weight. Again, no intentions of thinking I could become a YouTuber or anything like that. Just okay, why not, right? Because it was fun. Like there was this new, I have ADHD very badly, and so it was this new thing that I was super hyper focused on. I was getting attention, I guess you could say, but it was like this positive attention, and I was like, oh cool, I can help people with this thing. And so that's what that's why I started the YouTube channel, to help answer questions, film like full day of eatings and, random questions that I would get. And then, I had a couple videos that like went really viral. I had one that was like about loose skin. That was like what changed my life. That video went like super viral. I ended up going on the Ellen Show. It just like was everywhere, right? And then from there, things kind of snowballed. But as far as like the why I started stuff, it was to help people,
Well, I guess I see a lot of parallels between something like learning art or learning any skill and something like what you're doing, and I meet a lot of people who are artists who are like, I don't know where to start. It's too intimidating. I see everything on Instagram. I see my favorite artists, and they're just too far ahead. I could never catch up to them. And then it's like extremely easy to talk yourself into nihilism and not doing it, because it's like, why even bother at that point, And the thing I'm really trying to figure out is, like, I think if somebody really wants to, get better at something and make it a career and make an impact, even, it's like, start like a project, start a YouTube channel. Like, don't wait for permission in order to actually, like, do it badly and just see what happens, And like you were saying before, it's like, if you never started your Instagram and giving advice in a way that you look at back now and be like, I didn't know what I was doing, it never would have led to where you are now, where you actually are helping people.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with like weight loss, and so many people. So a saying that I like, I didn't make this up, is don't let perfect get in the way of good enough, right? Yeah. So people want the perfect routine. They want the perfect diet. And if they're not being perfect, they're like, what's the point? Yeah. Why should I even do this? Right. And that's what happens a lot with weight loss. And then it's the same thing with art. Like, for me, I am very new, right? For anyone watching, I am very new, right? It's been a couple months. And for the longest time, I had this, now I know, misinformed like notion that you are born as an artist, right? Like, it's like this skill that you have. I almost thought of it as people, my stream told me that I was wrong about this too, but like, I always thought it was like singing. Like, some people are just good at singing. I understand you can get better, but like, you're never going to be like Adele, right? Like, if you just have a terrible voice. At least, maybe I'm wrong on that. But like, I thought it was like something like that, where it was like, it was a skill that you have, and it is what it is, right? Because growing up, there would be kids that were really good, and I was just like, I can barely even draw, right? And then on top of that, growing up, still do, but I was in special ed, and I had this thing called, I have ADHD really bad, but I also have this thing called dysgraphia, and so it makes my handwriting really bad. It's very hard to read for most people, right? It's hard for me to read most of the time. But so I had like all these things that made me feel like, oh, it's just not possible for me, right? And so I never even really gave it a shot. Yeah. And so I would have these, I would look at these amazing pieces of art, and I would just think like, wow, this person has some sort of skill that is unattainable, right? You just are born with this amazing ability, right? And it really is just what I'm realizing now is you just put the work in over time, right? And it's the same thing with like weight loss, and like with weight loss, most people aren't like, wow, he just is born being able to lose weight, because like to lose weight, you have had to struggle with weight at some point, right? And so at least there's not that thing, because I know I watch a lot of art YouTube now, and this is something people talk about all the time. It's like, oh, people are just born. It's like, no, it's not like that, right? Yeah. And a lot of artists get very annoyed when like people are like, I can't even draw a stick figure. It's like, well, yeah, because you've never practiced, but if you practice, like, I even get it. People will comment on my stuff, which is not good, but it's like, I'm learning. I'm doing a lot of just reference work, looking at something and trying to make my own version, right? People are like, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, I promise if you spend a few hours, you could probably make something similar. Yeah. Like, I really don't think what I'm doing is anything extraordinary, right? Yeah. And so I get it. And trust me, I still deal with the same thing with weight loss. People are like, I just don't know where to start. And again, people always want this perfect plan at the start, and it's just not realistic. Like, it's like you said, it's like looking at a master and thinking, I could never do that. It's like, right now, let's be honest, right? You can't do that right now. Yeah. But to get to that point, you can do this step, right? Like, if someone wanted to lose I lost 180 pounds. If they wanted to lose 180 pounds, they're not going to do it today. Yeah. But they could lose 1 pound this week or something, right? Or change something, right? And then that type of philosophy can go with anything, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I think another part of that is like, something like weight loss. Like, you didn't stop going to the gym once you lost a bunch of weight. Mm-hmm. It's like, same thing with art. It's like the act of making a piece of artwork feels the same as if you're a beginner or if you're a master. It's just, you're just, putting down what you know. And like, I'm sure you're doing a lot of the same exercises you were doing, 5-10 years ago when you were losing, the weight that you'd put on. And I think a big part of this stuff is just getting rid of your ego, or at least understanding your ego a little bit better. Like, looking at yourself and being like, oh man, I can actually be that person if I just like learn to love the process of lifting weights or doing head exercises or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. I think a lot of people really struggle with they have a lot of, like, when we're talking about, like, going to the gym, right, or losing weight, a lot of people really struggle with going to the gym. They're afraid, right? And I would say ego is part of it, as well as just, like, feeling like you're going to be judged and stuff. Yeah. But, like, again, one, at the gym, most people aren't looking at other people. They're not like, oh, that person doesn't know what they're doing. What an idiot, right? Yeah. Like, people aren't doing that. They're focusing on themselves. But it is like, if I just wish I could tell people, like, I'm telling you, no one cares. Just go and start. We all start somewhere. Like, when I first started, I have a story. When I first started going to the gym, I was going with a friend of mine, and we were bench pressing, and we put on 2 different weights on each side of the bar, and we were trying to lift it. Yeah. And it just was like, what? Like, all messed up. And we had to someone came up to us and was like, hey, those are 2 different weights. It was a 35 and a 25. Yeah. And we felt so stupid, right? Yeah. But, like, okay, it was what it was. Like, we learned, and I've never done that since, thankfully. Yeah. And, like, it's the same thing with art. Like, it's like you have this fear of making something bad, but, like, who cares? Yeah. Like, you don't have to show it to anybody. Right. If you really care, but even then, like, I'll show whatever. I don't like.
But most people don't care in the first place.
Yeah, you know? Sadly, but that's the truth, right? Like, they're not going to. They're not gonna, like, people aren't going to, we think and it's not because I think we're, like, full of ourselves, but because we've only ever lived in our own bodies, right? Yeah. So we only know our experience, and so we think, like, people are gonna have these thoughts, and they're gonna blah, 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 right? But it's just not true. Like, people are doing their own thing, and, I don't know, I would say, like, if there is any, I'm not sure how many people would be watching this that haven't, like, started or afraid to start with art, but, like, if you are, I would just encourage you to start, because, like, the community that I've found, I've been very lucky, like, of how many people that I've had that just have encouraged me. It's really cool, you know, and just, like, people that are even messaging me being like, because of you, I've started, and this is something, you know, and that's just a cool feeling, you know.
Well, I feel like on a broader level, I think everyone has something that they're procrastinating on, something that they're afraid of, and, like, even for me, it's like, I draw a lot, but I have trouble, like, making YouTube videos or putting myself in front of a camera, or, you know, maybe even going to the gym a lot of the time. And I think that, like, no matter where you're at, that, like, understanding of fear and your own ability to procrastinate, I think is, you know, I think that applies to everything, you know. Like, for anyone that's listening to this, you probably are procrastinating on something. That, you know, if you just, like, went and you were bad at it for a day or a month or 2 months or however long it took, then you'd be able to get past and, like, get to the levels that you're like dreaming about being at, you know.
And I mean, the truth is, like, it sucks not being good at something. Yeah, like, it's not fun. It's not like I enjoy, like, starting something and I'm like, the amount of drawings I've been like, okay, I'm gonna try and draw this, and I try for an hour and it just doesn't work, and I'm just like, I can't do that yet. You know, but that's what I always try and tell myself is, like, yet. Eventually, you'll be able to do it. But it's just right now it's not working, and that's okay, right? But it's annoying. It's frustrating. Like, of course, you want to be able to be good at it right away. Yeah. But sadly, that's just not how things work, you know? Yeah. And, it's definitely something, because I mean, I'm pretty impatient as well, like ADHD, right? And so I'm always like, I just want to be good at something, like, right when I start. And I think that that's a very common kind of thing, but at the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. Like, you're not going to be a professional right when you start, and it's okay to, like, give yourself the, like, time to learn and be bad at something, because the only way to get good at something is to be bad right at the start. So,
well, and I think a couple things, like acting under the assumption that you're already bad at most things. Like, I have no idea how to scuba dive. I have no idea how to change the oil in my car, and, like, you could just, I'm bad at almost 100% of things. Just going about that mindset, it's like, again, it's that fundamental belief that it's okay to be bad at things. It doesn't matter. No one really cares. And, like, the thing generally stopping people, again, I think, is the ego. You know? But I had another thought that I was going to add on, but then I forgot it. So.
Yeah, no, like, with ego, it's interesting because, I think, like, there's, like, when I know, like, for myself, whenever I hear the word ego mentioned, it's almost like it's this negative thing. It's like, oh, if you have an ego at all, it's bad, right? You're, like, egotistical. But in reality, like, we all have an ego, and I don't think it's, like, necessarily, like, this negative thing. It just is what it is. It's just, we want to be good. And so when we're bad, it like makes us feel inadequate, right? Like it is your ego, but it's not in like the negative sense of the word where it's just like you should be ashamed of yourself because you have an ego, right? Yeah. It's just like you're human and we all do, right? Like no one loves to show up and be like, yeah, I messed up again and again and again, or I didn't do well. Yeah. No one's like, oh, this is awesome. I'm learning. Like I know like everyone says like the only way to get good at something is by failing, right? And learning. It's like, I agree, but it's hard to be like, heck yeah, dude, this one sucks again. Like I learned from that though. It's like, yeah, that's where like that is how you learn, but it is hard to always be positive about.
Oh yeah,
things not turning out the way you want them to.
Well, and I think that's the importance of like a positive feedback loop. You know, it's like when you talk to art teachers, they'll generally give a positive critique, like a positive element of a critique, and then a negative element. Yeah. You know, and you go back and forth, like complimenting one thing, and then, like saying, "Oh, you could improve on this thing." You know, and I like, would you say that you having your YouTube channel and your Instagram helped keep you accountable and like have a positive feedback loop for your fitness stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it would be ridiculous of me to say like, oh, the YouTube channel hasn't helped me at all, right? It absolutely has. I think having that there's like the amount of people that are there that if I started slipping up, they would care, right? They'd be like, hey, what's going on? Like what, where is John? What's he doing? Why isn't, there can be some negatives when you start growing. People can be mean. They're like, wow, he's gained weight, blah, 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 right? I've dealt with that and stuff like that. But like, it definitely helps having people that are just there. Yeah. Even with the art stuff. Like that's why I made an art Instagram almost not immediately. I had some people kind of like talk me into it because at first I was like, what's the point? I'm just learning. Yeah. But I'm so glad that I did because again, I think a lot as humans we look for community. Yeah. And so I've been able to find, my small community of people that are at least interested or they have said to me by following the page, I would like to see this, right? Yeah. So I don't feel guilty posting just like me practicing hands that look really bad, or whatever, right? It's like, this is what people are here for. They know that I'm not some professional artist or whatever, right? And I definitely think that, having a YouTube channel or just in general, like it doesn't, obviously I understand that not everyone wants to go down that road because it's a lot of work and just kind of, you have to figure a lot of stuff out. But like, even just trying to find community, I know you do the sketching stuff here, right? Like, just having some sort of community, even if it's just a Discord group or whatever it might be, right? Just like finding some sort of community that really does just help a lot. And I think that's why so many people will like follow Instagram accounts that are like weight loss, right? When they're trying to lose weight, because it's like we've talked about before outside of the podcast about like, watching drawing tutorials. You might not actually learn exactly what this teacher is trying to teach you, but it's like you're just immersing yourself in that, and it's motivating you to be like, okay, I'm around this, so I want to continue doing this, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and I feel like there's this romantic idea. I'd imagine it's in fitness as well, where you have to do everything by yourself. Mm-hmm. You don't need, like, if you ask for help or if you need help or anything, then you're weak or something. And I think no one really believes that explicitly, but somebody might act like that's true a lot of the time. They won't ask for help at the gym or they won't ask help for art. And I think everyone I know who's gotten good at art, they had a great community. Even if they were by themselves, they were doing it like online or something. They had a Discord or they had like conceptart.org or anything just to like communicate with people. Because I think fundamentally art is just another communication device. If you're not communicating ideas to people, you have no reason to say anything. You're not actually like getting any feedback, so it's really hard to motivate yourself to actually keep doing the work.
And it's almost dangerous to do it on your own, right? So like when we're talking about like fitness, like if you have only ever worked out by yourself, never had anyone help you on your form, right? You might think I'm doing this correctly, right? But then if someone that knows what they're doing for a long time were to look at, say you're doing a deadlift or something and your spine is rounded and it looks horrible, but you have been doing it for so long by yourself, and then that person tries to give you a critique, you're gonna be like, shut up. You know what you're talking about, right? And I would say it's the same thing with art, right? Like where if you've been like doing this your thing on your own forever, and you're, trying to draw figures or something like that, and like just the proportions are way off, and someone that's really good at it is like, hey, not trying to be mean, but they're just trying to give you feedback. And then you're just like, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing this forever, right? It's like, that's why having like community and critique is so important because it can help you find flaws that you wouldn't be able to pick out, right? I know it's something like a lot of people talk about once you start getting like better in art and you're like trying to do things on your own is like have people that won't just be like, this is awesome. Yeah. Great job. Right. That'll be like, good. But like this thing, like, the pinky is a little weird or the thumb shouldn't look like that or whatever. Right. And that's the same thing with fitness. Like if you're doing things only on your own, I mean, you can do it. It's fine. But if you want to get to the next level, having people or like just having a community or even someone that's helping you along the way is so important.
Yeah. So I think with art, like I think it's different from fitness in the sense that like you can say the things you want to say while also being like a not great draftsman. It's like I describe something like being good at drawing as like literacy. Like you know how to use your correctly. You know what a semicolon is. You know how to use a period. All that stuff. And the better you are at grammar, the more you're able to say. But maybe you don't necessarily need a crazy amount of grammar in order to say the things you really want to say. And, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to admire art that's not necessarily great technically, but it's like saying something really cool or really profound or, just it's kind of silly, Like that stuff resonates with me way more than something that's like a really complex 12-person huge painting that's
super realistic and everything.
Like, to me, that seems like... And it's more of my own personal taste, but it seems like kind of an ego thing to have the biggest, best painting in a gallery, And I guess there are so many different forms of good art. It's so subjective that, like, somebody giving you a critique on your arms or the way your heads look, it's not a critique of who you are, it's just a critique of the objective side.
It's just hard. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to, especially with art, right? Because a lot of it's so personal. Yeah. It's hard to like disconnect it and be like, this person said this piece isn't that great. I am a piece of trash, or whatever, right? Like, and then that comes down to not being a jerk when you are critiquing something. Yeah. And like, but I understand where you're coming from. Like, it's interesting because with art, like even say if the person is trying to make things look proportional and like like an arm look like an arm, I might be able to see something and be like, something looks off, right? But I wouldn't be able to articulate what's going on. That's when someone that knows what they're talking about, right, would be able to be like, this is what you did wrong, or like this is why it looks off, right? Because like I wouldn't be able to say. I just be like, that pinky looks weird. I don't know why. Because I wouldn't be able to correct it, right? But I could, like, people can see, especially with like anatomy, right? It's like when something is even slight, this was so freaking hard about it, but like just tiny bit off, it's like it looks way off. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, so at the Watts Atelier, I asked Derek Gist, one of the teachers there, the number one piece of art advice he'd give to anybody, and it's don't tie any portion of your self-worth to the quality of your artwork. Because I think that no matter what you do, it's extremely easy to compare yourself to the best people in it, And again, it's so hard that inevitably you're going to make mistakes. Even if you're like a master, you're going to have some weird hand, you're going to have some weird foot or something, It's like impossible not to. Like even looking at Kim Jong-gi, who's seen as like one of the greatest draftsmen of our time, like if you look closely at his drawings, there's like, oh, that's a little bit wrong, And again, it's like it comes back to a lot of the ideas of just like just doing it and just like keeping your head down and trying to enjoy the process of it as much as possible.
It's interesting because of how many parallels, because like basically it comes down to being able to forgive yourself, right? Like, or just like let things go. And this is like something I talk a lot about when people are trying to lose weight.
Absolutely.
It's like, oh, I messed up, and then they'll like dwell on it for a whole week. It's like, oh, I ate this one thing, well I'm already messed up, might as well blah 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 blah, right? And it's like you got to just be like, I messed up, I forgive myself, let's move on, right? And then the same thing with like and I know for me, like sometimes I'll like work on a piece. Again, I'm very new, but like I'll work on a piece and I'll just be not happy with how it turned out or whatever. And then like it is hard. Sometimes in my head, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? Just give up. Why are you even trying? Right. And it's just like, you just got to be like, all right, well, that one didn't work out. It is what it is. And it's really important to like take home. And this is stuff that I always bring up is like, people will ask me like, how'd you do this? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, I messed up all the time. I was not perfect. No one is, right? When they're trying to lose weight and like getting into fitness, no one is going to be perfect. Yeah. And it's the same thing with art, right? These people that I look up to, I'm sure have had many, many drawings that they now would be like, yeah, that was not the best, right? That was a mess up or whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. But it's like, that happened. Try to learn from it. I would say that's important, right? Yeah. Like what was I not happy about here? Was I just like the concept I just didn't like or whatever, right? Whatever the thing is. Yeah. And then just be like, okay, maybe don't do that again. Or maybe tweak some things so I don't go down that road again, right? And doing the same thing. Right. And it's the same thing with fitness, right? Like whatever you did wrong, okay, what was the thing that caused me to slip up?
Yeah.
How do I change that and then move on, right?
Well, I guess the way that I look at a bunch of this stuff is like, a big part of it being on the art path or any path in general is like accepting fundamentally where you're at, you know, like, you know, if you're a beginner artist and you're starting to try to do illustrations that are really complex and amazing, you're going to quickly feel like a piece of shit. Whereas like, if you're just like, I'm just going to draw heads today and I'm going to have a win and I'm going to feel good about that win. And that's all I'm going to need to be successful.
That's when I started doing chibi. I was like, I'm just going to do some chibi things that are cute.
Absolutely.
Big eyes. Yeah. There we go. All right, I'm happy with these. And then I can work on some stuff that's maybe more like more realism or whatever that I'm not going to be like, look, everyone, what I made, this mangled hand. But I can be like, look at this cute little whatever animal that I made, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and you're giving yourself wins, too. Yeah. You're giving yourself something to be proud of and to go based on, you know, to like compare yourself to who you were yesterday instead of someone else today, sort of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And like the more that, again, I think you're able to do that and, you know, like look towards the ideals, look towards the great people in the craft or anything as like, oh man, it would be amazing if one day I could do that, but not necessarily basing your entire...
Like, why can't I do that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I think that impulse to like, you know, try to either take someone else down or take yourself down is like, you know, that doesn't really help anyone at all. Like, you know, I'm actually very inspired by your love of art. I think it's super cool. Like, you know, you going, you know, like reaching out to people, you like being very humble about the craft and like trying stuff out and learning a lot. I think that's like what it's all about fundamentally. And, you know, I think it's part of the danger of trying to do it professionally is that instead of you doing it for yourself, you're wanting to be chosen by a company. So you have to have a certain bar for quality, and inevitably some of these emotions might come up.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed about myself is, again, I keep up bringing the ADD, but it's a big part of my life, and like so I get hyper focused on things, and so I've been really lucky that when I get hyper focused, I don't know what it is about me, but I crave community. Yeah. Like even if it doesn't have to be huge, but just like I seek out people that are good at the thing that I am currently interested in, right? And so for like when I got into drums, I like looked into drumming and like followed people and all that stuff. And then when I got into skateboarding, it was the same thing. I looked up skaters that I liked and followed them and would try and message them if they didn't like, but it was never like they have to reply. It was just like if they reply, that's awesome and that'll make me feel cool. But if they don't, whatever, right? It is what it is. And then the same thing with art. Like I've reached out to many people and a lot of them have responded. Some of them haven't. It's all good, right? But it's like it's just trying to find that community. And then I've been really lucky that I was able to find you. I was able to find Rembert, like, and be able to do really cool stuff that I'm like, I really feel very lucky to have been able to do it. Yeah. But it was all because I was just like, I'm going to reach out and just not even like with Rembert, like I didn't even reach out and it was like, hey, I would like some tips. It was literally just like commenting on his posts, you know, just like because I like what he does and I thought it was cool. You know?
Absolutely. Well, and I think a big part, like, a big part of all this stuff is like just pure enthusiasm as well. You know, it's like you were on Ellen and you told me you were on Dr. Phil recently. Like, you know, you don't have to be the biggest bodybuilder or the biggest, you know, fitness person on the planet in order to have something of value to offer to a conversation, you know? And again, I think a lot of people are striving to be the best artist in the room, you know, or they're striving for, again, that ideal, like all or nothing sort of thing instead of like, you know, maybe like not everyone can work at a place like Riot, but maybe you can like start your own webcomic, or maybe you can start your own YouTube series, or you know, literally anything. And maybe that is the thing that you actually fall in love with more than, you know, pursuing that grand ideal.
Yeah. And, yeah, for me, like when it comes to like people like, what do you want to do? Like, why are you getting into art? What's your goals? I'm like, I don't really have any. Like, it's just something that's interesting to me that I think a big part of it really is that I am almost frustrated that I waited this long. Yeah. Because for so many years, like I truly thought I just can't. Right. Like there's no way to get better at it. You're either good or you're bad. Yeah. And it's interesting because since I've gotten, this is kind of a tangent, but like since I've gotten into art, I've started appreciating art so much more.
Yeah.
Because like for a long time, I would see stuff, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Right. But in my head, I think I would think, well, that person's just very good at art. They were, they're lucky to be that good.
Yeah.
When in reality, now I know that person has put in years of their life and they have, they've been able to, especially when people have a very distinct, like, I don't want to call it style. I know it's kind of people have, but like they have a very distinct, like, this is their stuff, right? I just think that's really cool because they've obviously put in a lot of work to do that, and it's just been something like I think that's cool. Like to be able to make like I really like concept art. I think that's really cool to be able to literally have this idea and then make it a thing on a piece of paper that sometimes will turn into part of a movie or part of a game or whatever it is. Right? That's so cool to me. Like that is. I think one of the coolest things, like to be able to, like a lot of these people, these artists are literally creating all of this media that we enjoy so much, right? Or even comics, right? Like think about Superman, Spider-Man, all these things that like they didn't exist. They were in the artist's head, right? And now they're, things that people have loved their entire lives.
Yeah,
it's just cool.
And I guess even talking to Rembert, or any great like artist that anyone ever talks to, like a lot of it is just that like lifting weight sort of thing. They're just like doing their reps. They're drawing their arms. They're just doing it at a different level. I've heard a lot of people say that like the work that they were doing at like 19 or 20 is the same work that they're doing in their 30s or 40s, just at a much bigger scale. And again, I think a big part of all this stuff again is like that love of, I don't want to say tedium, but just the monotonous like grind and being okay with, like life can't be eating ice cream sandwiches and playing video games all the time. And if it is, you would hate it. Yeah. And, if somebody's able to find, again, like love of the, maybe just drawing heads or editing a video or any of that stuff, that, that to me is like the spice of life.
Yeah. I mean, if you hate the process, the chances of you becoming good at the final product is very low, whether that's art or losing the weight or, like this is what I talk about all the time. Like people are like, I want to lose weight. I just need to do it fast. It's like, I can tell you a way to do it fast, but you're going to hate it the entire time. And once you're done, you're probably going to gain the weight right back because it's not going to be fun. Like, I'm not saying it has to be super enjoyable all the time, but like if you are the whole time you're doing it, say it's art, right? Like you force yourself at the very start to be like, I'm going to draw realistic heads at the very start. And then you're just like, this is horrible the entire time, but you force yourself. Like, I would say that the chances of you sticking to that are probably pretty low. I mean, I don't really know, but like,
I think, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Well, it's probably same thing for, again, weightlifting, running, cycling, like any art endeavor. Yeah. And again, I think it's like, it's part of the danger of trying to do it professionally is that you're inevitably just signing up for somebody's standard of art or somebody's taste in art because, they're paying you money for it. You have to draw the things that they're telling you to draw. Yeah. So, like, the goal is to just get as close to your taste as possible and then either stay there or go off and do your own thing,
No, but like I can understand that, like, getting into art, especially like because for me it's like, and I'm not trying to be self-deprecating. I'm just being realistic. Right? I've been drawing for 2 months, right? Like, so the thought of like making art any sort of career it's not even something I'm really that interested in right now, at least. Like and it's like that would be years down the road, even if I decided to pursue that, right? Yeah. And so seeing people whose job it is to do art and being able to have conversations with them and maybe they're not the happiest with exactly what it's interesting because it's like the position they have has garnered them maybe a lot of prestige, but they might not truly enjoy doing the day-to-day stuff, right? And so it is interesting because it's like with anything, no matter what, if you start doing something as work, anytime it's work, most of the time there's going to be negatives, right? Regardless of if it's your dream job, right? Like I make YouTube videos and compared to a lot of jobs, it's very easy, right? Yeah. But maybe I'm just a terrible person, but I've been able to find things to be like, I don't like this, you know?
Absolutely. No, I'm the same way.
And so it's like, that's the thing. I think it's important to not over idealize the end, right? Because again, if you're only idealizing the end and finding no joy in the process, the fact is the process is going to take up most of the time. And that finished piece of art or whatever is only going to be, you finish it, and then what do you do next? You got to move on to the next one, right? And then so you're going to be in the middle of the process that you hate so much, right? Like hopefully you don't hate it, right? It's interesting. It's the same thing with like losing weight. Again, it's like if you're constantly losing weight in ways that are so unbearable and you just hate it, once you lose the weight, you're going to have to continue. That's why this is so random. Okay, I understand. But like, you're going to have to continue to keep that weight off. And if you did it in a really unsustainable way, which is usually way too fast, right? It's almost impossible. Like the numbers show, right? And so that's why I'm such a big proponent of chill out, slow down. And I would assume like most of like, cause I've looked at a lot of tutorials and people like, if all you're doing is like trying to, I'm going to draw hands all day, that's it. And you're not doing anything that unless you really like drawing hands. Some people, I'm sure, right? But like, if you're just like, no, I'm going to draw hands. I don't love it, but it's like, I know I need to, which is part of any process, like doing something that you're maybe not great at because you want to get better. But if that's all you're doing and you're never doing anything that you enjoy, one program that I was doing is called Drawbox. And a big thing that they have is 50-50, right? 50% is like doing the exercises that I think his name is Uncomfortable. He talks about how they're not fun. They're tough, right? You'll be frustrated and you'll probably mess up, and it is what it is. But the other half should be you having fun drawing. And I really like that because it's so easy for us, especially now in today's day and age, to want to be good fast. And I struggle with it too. Like I go down that road. I'm like, God, just do the exercises. Like you can draw later, draw on the weekend. Like all week, just do the exercises. But I was realizing, I was like, okay, you need to stop doing this. Like, what is the point of this? You're not even having fun anymore. Well,
and I guess it goes back to a few things. Like I've heard a lot of people talk about, art being a thing to service their life versus them servicing the art. It's like a lot of people treat art like a religion, to where it's like, say your 10 Hail Marys is the equivalent of like draw your 10 Loomis heads for the day or something, And I was talking to this guy the other day, and he was saying that like the trouble isn't, as a creative person, doing like finding work. The trouble is like finding the thing that you're willing to get up in the morning and like go do with like 100% passion. Because like I don't think that something like being a great artist is necessarily hard if you really, really love it. It just takes like, are you going to get bored of it before you actually finish? And if you get bored, you're not going to do a good job, and you're going to get you're going to procrastinate. You're going to do all these things, and you're going to hate yourself for it. And it might have been better to have just done the thing you care about in the first place and then go on the slower path.
It's hard to explain. Like if like what I'm thinking about is like, it might sound like a dream job to say draw smiley faces all day and you make a ton of money. But if you're someone that like truly enjoys art and you enjoy getting better, eventually you're probably gonna be like, oh my God, I have to draw these smiles. Like, it's easy and it's not really that hard, but if you're doing it all day long, it's really hard to be like, I love my work. I love what I'm doing, And then, I can understand that. And it's the same thing with like YouTube and all that stuff, right? It's like you can find a way that's easy to make videos, but if you're not proud of the videos you're making, eventually you're just gonna be like, what am I doing? Why? Like I'm not having fun. I'm making money, but and again, like I understand it's kind of a privileged place because trust me, I came from not much money. I know what that's like, but it really is true. Money isn't it doesn't solve everything. It really, really doesn't. It does solve some things quite a bit, but like it doesn't solve everything. And like it is a very normal human thing to be just over it at some point,
Well, a question that I like to ask everybody is like, would you be doing exactly the same thing you're doing right now if you had $1 billion? It's like doing art, making YouTube videos. And
probably not.
well, and it's like what, and it's kind of a, it's obviously a hypothetical, rhetorical question because very few people have $1 billion. But it's like, what things would you cut out if you had $1 billion? And maybe those things aren't necessarily like, you obviously have to keep doing them to keep the lights on. But like maybe being a cashier sucks, but it enables you to do the things that you really care about, And a lot of times, a lot of people have things that they could cut out of their lives that they actually don't like doing, and it would just take a very small sacrifice in some way,
Yeah, I think like it comes down to finding that balance, because I think it's dangerous to only do things you enjoy.
Yeah.
Right? Because like that's what led me down to being the size that I was. I just didn't care, and I was like, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. I'm not going to work out. Why would I do that? It's hard, right? And so that's dangerous, but also I do think it is dangerous to like always be like, I got to grind, I got to work, I got to never enjoy anything. Like that's definitely not the road I want to go down, you know, because it's like life is supposed to be lived always, right? Like not eventually, right? I'll live life eventually. Like I do think there's times where you can sacrifice a little bit more, but I just think it's about finding that balance of like sacrificing and doing things that maybe you don't enjoy a ton with things that you do enjoy, that bring you, that, you know, make you feel like your life has a purpose, you know, so you're not just always working, right?
Yeah, well, and like trying to live in the moment and be like gracious for the things that you do have. You know, it's like I used to watch some Bob Ross videos, and he was talking about how like if you had the chance to paint today, then you had a great day. It doesn't matter how good the art is, you know, because you're able to paint. That doesn't mean you're being shot at. That doesn't mean you know, it doesn't mean a lot of things. That you know, you have your arms, you have you have a lot of great things in order.
Just extra time too, just that downtime, you know.
Yeah, and I know that that's a very hard perspective to look at. Like it's very romantic and kind of idealistic. But if you're able to manage looking at it that way, I think that, you know, the art process or, you know, anything is going to be a lot easier for anyone that's able to do it.
Yeah, just like not stressing too much about, again, just like trying to focus on the positives and realize like what you have instead of like not just always focusing on what you don't have, which again is easier said than done. I get 100%. But yeah, that's definitely something that I've tried to do. And like, especially with like my art right now, like it's so easy. It would be so easy for me to look at something I've made and then compare it to something that's, you know, someone that's been drawing for 10 years and made and be like, well, mine sucks. But it's like, what's the point of, what am I going to get out of that? Like, yeah, that's true. Like compared to this one, most people would say this is a better thing. But like, okay, so what? Like, why would you do that to yourself? You know, like, why would I like put myself down? Like, it doesn't serve anyone, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, and it takes away from the world. You know, you actually might take away some image that somebody might find a lot of meaning in just because like somebody's being too hard on themselves or something. And I think,
or like when, like just being able to show someone like, hey, this isn't great. And but that might, sounds bad, but like that might inspire someone to be like, oh, yeah, I can try. Like I could probably make that, you know? Absolutely. And like that's stuff that I've noticed. Like I've had people like I picked up my pencil for the first time in forever because like, you know, and that's a really cool feeling, you know? Absolutely.
Well, and it goes back to like, you know, like an argument against nihilism and how easy it is to be a nihilist, but it's like, why do things matter at all? And I think a big part of why things matter is just the decision that it matters in the first place. You know, it's like, you know, why go for a walk every day? It doesn't really, you know, why lift? Why do anything? And the answer is like, there's a reason to it. You know?
Yeah. I mean, that is a dangerous road to go down because I get that, that feeling and that want, but again, it's like at the end of the day, yeah, it's easy to say that, but okay. What is that doing for you? You know, like, are you actually getting anything out of this? And yeah, again, I think it really does come down to, you know, finding that balance of like being realistic and not like always like being overly, you know, I think the saying like a lot of people are talking about like toxic positivity. And I do think that is a thing, you know, like always just looking at the bright side and never focusing on the negative. Like, it's like, hey, you got some stuff going on that you need to figure out. Right. But it's like finding that balance of not going too far this way and not going too far the other way.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I feel like, you know, that sometimes I totally understand when people do go the other way just because it's, or like the negative side, because it's like, it's extremely easy to zoom out and be like, you know, in a million years, nothing will matter. You know, if you zoom out, we're just a little speck flying through space at the, you know, in a sea of infinite nothingness, you know? And I disagree with that so fundamentally, even though I sometimes act like it's true. But like our ability to even have this conversation, I think is something that's like extremely meaningful and extreme, like, it's a miracle that we're able to have this conversation. Like the fact that we're two essentially monkeys in like a metal box. You know, like I didn't build this van. I have no idea who did. Like these cameras are essentially black magic to me. And we're just like going to send this to the internet where however many people are going to watch it. It's like a miracle. Right? And the fact that I'm ever able to not be gracious for that, I think is like it's strange. I'm not faulting myself for it, but it's like a weird human thing that we all have inside of ourselves.
Yeah, it's just like if you were to bring someone from the 1700s, they'd be like, "What is going on? Like, what?"
Well,
like,
it's like I'm 27. You're
30. Yeah,
30. It's like we're old men.
Yeah,
we're gonna die at 35.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that.
It's fucking weird.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like having a cake in the 1700s is like buying an Xbox or like even buying a car because it's so expensive to buy sugar or like have a, like just anything. And we just go to the grocery store and buy a pineapple in winter, It
might be a little bit more expensive, and we're just like, why is that? But then we think, because it's January.
Right.
Like pineapples aren't growing.
Yeah. So another human being had to grow this somewhere in Colombia.
Yeah.
And, it had to go on a freighter.
Send it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's like a miracle. I was having a podcast last night, and we were talking about like just the like sheer miracle of humanity in general. Like even now, I think it's really easy to look at the news and be like, everything sucks. School shootings, COVID, the economy. You just go down a list of horrible things. But the other flip side of that, which I think the news doesn't focus on, is the positive element of the world. There are less people starving to death than there ever have been. More people have access to education and literacy, and less people are dying of polio. Like all these different things, and it's like an incredible thing. It's like, wow, like. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's just we're in the most advanced time ever, right?
Yeah.
Like it's hopefully only going to continue to get better.
Yeah.
And it is really, but it's just, I think it's human nature. Like we focus on the negative, to bring it back to like social media and stuff. Like I can get 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50 different like positive comments, but then someone will leave a negative one, and like that's the one I'm like, I'm gonna read this.
Heck?
Let me reply to this one.
Yeah.
But the other ones I'll just like maybe say thanks, but then this one I'll be like, I'm gonna go line by line and read over this whole thing and prove why this person's wrong, and I'm gonna spend all of this mental energy on this negative comment instead of like actually focusing on these like positive ones. And like so I catch myself doing that sometimes, and like I'll notice that I'm like about to reply, and then I'll stop and be like, let me go to these positive ones and reply first. And then maybe I won't reply to that, but either maybe I'll still be like, I'm gonna reply to this person still, or whatever, but at least I replied to 5 positive ones, and didn't only focus on the negative, because I think like people see that and they'll be like, okay, well, I'll leave a negative comment, and like at least I'll get a reply,
Yeah, well, I think I totally agree. I mean, I don't have a massive personal channel. Yeah, I released a video today, and it has like 100 views so far or something. Not a lot at all, but 1 dislike. It's like 5 likes and 1 dislike, and I was like, this motherfucker. Who the fuck disliked this? It's like, why?
Yeah.
And I don't know. The advice I generally get is just not to read comments, because like it's an open forum. People can just project. Like I don't follow that advice a lot of the time, but
it's a double-edged sword, because especially when you're growing, it's good to interact with the people, but like as I've gotten bigger, it's definitely like I have to be in a good place if I'm going to do that.
Right.
Because if I'm struggling that day, and then I read comments of people saying, well, why'd you do this, you idiot, blah, 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 whatever, it don't make me feel any better, So it's a balancing act, right? Like finding, not trying, like if I'm in a good headspace and like I can read a comment that's negative, I'm like, whatever. Because there's times when I can do that, but there's other times when I'll read that comment and it'll ruin my entire day. And like sometimes it's almost embarrassing to admit that, but it's just the truth. Like
Well, I had a person, Steven Zapata. He's another artist. I had him on my podcast, and he quoted Ariana Grande saying, one of her song lyrics is like, "I wish I could see myself the way you see me." Where it's like there is the negative side, which it's like rare, but it does have an effect. But then there's the extremely positive side that's like, you've changed my life. They idolize I'm just like, you. I
don't believe you.
I don't believe you 100% of the
literally,
time.
that's like the imposter syndrome, dude. Like, trust me, because I have people that'll say that, right? Like, you've helped me change my life, or they'll be like, you've changed my life. And I'll always reply to them like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Which I believe that, because like, especially with like losing weight and getting fit, like you have to do the work. It doesn't matter what I say. Right. I might be able to give you some information, but like imposters, and that's why I think it's like, it's almost like in the back of our head, we're always like, I feel like I'm tricking all these people, and then when someone leaves a negative comment, it's like, see, it's true, these thoughts that are in my head, and see, everything that I'm thinking is right. All these other comments are just people lying, trying to make me feel good, but this one's real, you know, and I hate that.
But it's so crazy, because it's like, you could have 1 million subscribers or 10 million subscribers or whatever, people that have agreed to be notified to watch your content, you know, hundreds of thousands, and still that negative comment is the thing that stands out among the sea of positivity, you know. And I've gotten like talking to artists, I feel like generally the people that are able to be like the most successful in a field like of art, they're the people that are like able to like see the positive element of what they're doing way more than the negative. You know? And I guess it goes back to the why of it. It's like, if you can figure out the reason you're fundamentally doing it, whether it's helping people, maybe it's providing for your family or anything, like maybe that is the thing that is able, you know, is the thing that is able to force you to overcome that negativity that somebody might be facing, you know? And I guess, it's focusing on that why more so than anything.
Yeah, and especially with social media, a lot of people, it's just, especially right now with like Instagram and stuff, everything is so focused on like, you have to post a certain way, do it a certain thing, and then do it like this, because if you want to grow at all, you better be posting this way, and if you're not, it's like, what's the point? And so it's like a lot of people get caught up in like, you almost like, you start for a certain reason, but then you start playing the game, because if you don't, like, your posts don't get seen, things don't get pushed, but then you might be doing that for a while, and then you take a step back, you're like, I'm not even enjoying this anymore, or like, I'm not even helping anyone anymore. I'm just posting with this trending sound because that's what you have to do now, you know? And so it's tough, especially like if social media is where you're like, okay, that's where I'm going to grow. It's like, it's so easy to get lost in it.
Yeah. Well, it's been something that I've been trying to struggle with, because like, you know, this podcast has been my, you know, again, I tend to be on the more negative side of myself. It's been me dipping my toe into what it's like to be a YouTuber. Like, I've always helped other people create their own channel, and this is me like, okay, what's something I'm willing to do, that I'm able to do, that like I can actually, you know, will myself to go and try and create, you know? And the idea of like making titles and clickbaity things, it's like, I understand why it has to be done, but it's such a scary thing to try and make work, that it's, you know, I think it's easy for me to lose the why of it very quickly.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Especially now, man. It's like, it's very hard, honestly, to keep your why. Yeah. And to keep doing why you started, and not just be like, okay, how do I grow? How do I grow? And then like, you start thinking that way, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily always bad, but like, it is so easy for that to take over everything and just be like, grow. Right. It's like, what are you growing for? Like, for what? What's the point? Right. And I'm at a point now where it's like, I'm struggling with it. I'm like, what is the point? I've been doing YouTube and Instagram for almost 10 years now. You know, it's like, at some point I'm just like, why am I doing this now? Is it just because that's what I do? Right. Okay. If that's why, if I'm doing it just because that's what I do, at what point am I just like, at what point do you move on? At what point do you just like, hey, maybe I need to do something else, you know? And I think that's why I've always really enjoyed having different like hobbies and getting into things, because it helps me have something else that I can really focus on that isn't just growing on YouTube or Instagram, right? It's like something that I really like, that I can slowly get better at and see progress through.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, again, I've adopted somewhat of like an optimistic nihilism with this kind of stuff, where like, even if you have, you know, you're working towards 1 million subscribers or something, that's still not that many people on the planet, you know? Like, in our small sphere of YouTube people, it might be, oh, you have 1 million subscribers, that's so cool, but, you know, there's, you know, 7.5 billion other people on the planet, and most of them don't have internet. So the idea that your thing is the most important or anything, and it's not okay for anyone to step away because they've achieved some, you know, fame or something that is enviable, that's not necessarily the right argument to be using for someone, for yourself. Not you specifically, just for the all you, and I think generally people get tied to an identity to the point where they're willing to look past the sunk cost fallacy and just keep going in spite of it making them unhappy or depressed or anything. And
100%, man. Like, if you make something your identity, it is so hard to just be like,
peace,
I'm just done with it, But it's important to look at that, right? Because, like, especially when you've been doing something for a long time, it's hard to, like, what is life outside of that? And that's kind of scary, right? Like, I think human beings, we are generally afraid of unknowns. And, if you've been doing YouTube or art or whatever it might be for so many years, the thought, it's hard to even think of what life would be outside of it.
Yeah.
And like I've struggled with that a lot, especially recently, because I think like just turning 30 and like having that like, wow, I'm 30 now, like a lot of people that are older, like that's nothing, right? But like for me, it was a big deal, and it's like,
I'm thinking about it right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm 27 again. Yeah. It's 2.5 years away. And again, identity is such a bitch, because you could have, again, all this, you could feel like you figured it out for a little while, and then the rug gets swept out from under you so quickly, And I've talked to like everybody I've met, anyone who's super successful, they've had like great successes and great failures. And as they get more successful, the failures just become greater, like maybe you work so hard to, become physically fit, but then the goalpost moves so incredibly far away that you feel like you can't, you feel like you were when you just started, I guess it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's, that love for what you do and that love for yourself and that forgiveness is extremely hard to cultivate.
Yeah, it's tough. It's just like, that's the danger of making one thing your entire identity, because a lot of times that thing can be pulled away from you, or you might just genuinely lose interest, and then you're like, what do I do now? But I think it's like one of those things where you have to. It's scary, but you have to accept that and be like, okay, what is next? Yeah. What else can I do? Right. Which is hard, because it's something that I think about often, and I don't have the answer for that. But at the end of the day, like, is it going to kill you? Yeah. Probably not, right? If you move on, it will be scary for a while. But like, if you really take a step back, instead of like catastrophizing, which is something that I do a lot, instead of like, oh, if I'm not doing this, what am I doing? Life is over, blah, blah. It's like, okay, if truly YouTube disappears, right, which is my job, and I don't know what to do, will I just give up? No, I'd figure something out. Yeah. And like I've made connections. I have people that I can talk to. I could figure something out where I'm not like, okay, I'm going back, because I worked at Starbucks before. Like, unless I really wanted to go back to Starbucks, like I could figure something out that isn't that, probably, right? But it's so easy to just, it's the end of the world, everything's over. Yeah. And like, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Right. Well, and I guess I've had my own small version of it recently, because I was laid off at Proco. Mm-hmm. I've worked at Proco for 4 years, and it's like one of the first things I've done in my life where I'm like, oh, that's cool that I've been able to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really easy to tie yourself to an identity like that. Like, oh, this big YouTube channel, get to do these videos, get to meet all these artists. And, I'm so cool with Stan, but it's like, I'm not going to be spending my time doing that every day. So I have to figure out something else, And the trouble for me isn't like figuring, like, I have plenty of things I know I want to do, but just like believing in myself enough and giving myself the like permission to actually go and pursue those things. That's the hard part. That's way harder than anything else. Like, if I wanted to do art professionally, I still have a little bit of ways to go, but I can fucking do that. Or
I mean, all these connections you've made with these artists and other companies and other people, right? It's like, I'm sure you could figure something out.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah. Well, I don't think this is the last time I'm going to have an existential, threat of identity and all that kind of stuff. And I guess knowing that, I guess there are two ways of looking at it. It could be like, oh man, like I'm going to experience this loss again. There's no point in even trying. Or like, I've experienced this loss before. I know what it's like. It's not that big of a deal, And I guess I'm both people at just different times of the day.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, it is what it is. I'm the same exact way. You know, I can be positive, but I can be extremely negative as well. It's part of my personality, and I think like trying to force one or the other it's a losing battle. And so I try to accept it, but again, try not to let that negativity overtake too long. Right? Feel it and understand like it's okay to be like, you know, the channel isn't doing as well, and like that's frustrating. You know, it's okay to feel that way, but it's not okay to be like, well, then I'm just going to give up. Or if you are truly like, I'm just going to stop, it's like, okay, you're not going to make videos anymore. What are you going to do next? Instead of just be like, I'm not making videos and nothing's going to work out and everything's over, right?
Yeah. And I guess doing something is the, you know, like literally anything, you know, is the key to figuring it out. Like I don't think you're going to stop working out. And, you know. Yeah,
exactly.
But do you have anything else you want to talk about, or? Do you have to get going at all, or?
Well, I mean, I have to do more editing for my work. But no, not really, man. Like, I just appreciate being on here. Like I said, like it's
very cool.
It's cool. Like I've been very lucky to have made any sort of connections in like the art world or whatever, and it's been cool. It was cool to be able to go up to Riot with you and see everything. Sure. That was fun. I mean, I think that's everything.
Sweet, awesome, man. Well, how should people follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, obese_2 TO _beast, or obese the beast on YouTube.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. Cool. I'll cut it there. Yeah. Thanks, dude.
Yeah, dude.